else over there? And city staff?
Jenna Albers. Nora Shepard.
David Stroud.
All right, welcome everybody.
Gordon is over there.
We do have one other, Gordon Miner.
Gordon Miner.
All right. This is a public meeting, and so we have set aside some time at the beginning of this meeting for items that are not on the agenda or not public record. So if you'd like to come forward with any concerns or thoughts or ideas, please limit your time to about 3 minutes and come up to the speaker and state your name and address for the record. Okay, since there isn't any, we'll close public comment at this time, and we'll move on to our agenda item number 4. This is a public hearing for code amendment to Title 19 for sign illumination. Todd Myers is our applicant, and this is located at 2023 South Redwood Road. We'll turn the time over to Jenna Albers for the presentation.
Hello, everyone. So this is a code amendment for our sign illumination code for the city. So Maverick came to us. They are currently building on the site here, designated right across from the golf course in our lower residential community or regional commercial area. Thank you. So last September, Maverick came to the city council and there was a work session based on this sign illumination. Various comments were made, which were included in my staff report. There were some concerns, but overall there was a positive, recommendation, and it was tabled for another time period. Meanwhile, Maverick has come. They have constructed their building, which was approved, and their sign permits have all been approved. And so they applied this May for a code amendment so that they could have illumination on those signs that have been approved. The current code states that signs are not allowed to have illumination which face any residentially zoned properties. And so this proposed code amendment would actually allow commercial uses to have illuminated signage that face residentially zoned properties at a reduced brightness. So the current code states that no illuminated signage shall directly face adjacent residential development or zoned property, including properties across a street. Directly facing means perpendicular and within 15 degrees of perpendicular in either direction. So Maverick proposed language which would result in a diminished 50% illumination continuously from sunset to sunrise, and meaning there would be, instead of what the code regulates for 2 candle foot illumination, a measurement, to a 1 foot code, 1 foot candle measurement. And so the staff took into consideration both what Maverick had proposed as well as concerns that were raised during the work session for City Council. And so a 2-part exception is being proposed. So illuminated signage may face adjacent residential development or zoned property if the sign is automatically dimmed by 50% so as to not exceed 1 foot candle as measured 1 foot from surface of the sign, and the illuminated sign shall be a minimum of 100 feet from the nearest residential building footprint. So this 100 feet was also taken into consideration for not just this property, but concerns for other sites such as Costa Vida in our Pioneer Crossing area, which was also a point of issue for the city. So we recommend as staff that a positive recommendation for this code amendment.
Okay, and is the applicant here?
I just add some.
Sorry?
Well, if I could just add some to that also.
Go ahead.
Businesses are still going to have to be required to, if they shut down, they're still going to have to be required to turn their sign lights off. This would affect businesses that are open for 24/7. So for instance, the Costa Vida that was brought up, they'd be able to, if it would be to be approved, Costa Vida would have the lighted sign, but once they close, they'd still have to turn their outside building lights off. That part of the code is still in effect.
Okay, thank you very much. Is the applicant here? Would you introduce yourself for us and your name and address for the record?
Absolutely. My name is Leslie Mascaro, and I represent Maverick. My address is 185 South State Street, and it's Suite 800. I just want to thank you for your public service. We really appreciate you being here tonight, and also I'd like to thank staff for their excellent help, and that was a great presentation. I appreciate everything that was said. The only thing that I could really add to that presentation is just that our market studies have identified that approximately 94% of our consumers have identified that signage is one of the most important things in order to locate a C-store. In addition to that, there are other businesses such as retail and also supermarkets that consumers have identified that signage is really important. One of the reasons why for C-stores it's so critical is that a lot of our pricing for our fuel is located on that signage, and we need to ensure that drivers have substantial time to be able to identify the C-store and then actually make the turn into the station itself. This would also provide the ability to illuminate signage along some of your major corridors, such as Redwood Road and also Pony Express. And we feel that this is a code or a text amendment that would greatly assist Maverick, but also all of the other businesses that are along that corridor.
Thank you, Leslie. You can sit down and join us, and we might have some questions for you. Go ahead and have a seat if you'd like to. Okay, this is a public hearing, so we would like to open up public comment at this time for item number 4. This is the code amendment for Title 19 for sign illumination. If anybody has any comments about this item, please come forward. Okay, given that there aren't any, we will close public comment, and we will open this up to the Planning Commission for comment.
Okay. Can I go ahead and start? Yeah. Okay. I have a few questions. The signage that I see as an issue would be 1, 3, and 4. Those would have more impact on residential, is that right? The east-facing sign, the south-facing sign, and then the pricing sign. The north-facing sign doesn't face residential, right? Okay. I've had some concerns by residents, specifically who live across the fairway in the homes on the other side of the fairway, the other side of Redwood. So at the diminished brightness, how bright will that be for those residents? I mean, what's that going to be like for them?
So one candle length is measured, I had to look this up myself.
Okay.
So one
And that's why I'm asking you.
candle is the equivalent of seeing 12 like birthday candles all together a foot away. That's how bright it is.
Okay.
And so our code usually states about 2-foot candle. Diminishing this by half would make a significant difference.
Okay. Well, first of all, let me tell the applicant, I'm really excited for your story. I think the whole city is. I think we're all pretty excited you're coming. And I understand the need to have the sign with the pricing very visible for drivers in both directions. My question would be, if we diminish 50% on the signage on the building, is it possible to have a further reduction in that lighting after a certain time at night? So if you diminish by 50% at sunset, could it be 3 hours later that it diminishes even another percentage? Is that too hard to regulate?
So this was also brought up in the work session from last fall.
Okay.
And one of the comments that was made was that with this reduction, it's most likely that street lights along Redwood Road are going to be brighter than the actual sign.
I was going to say, aren't the canopy lights still on?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'll still see those
Those
lights.
canopy lights will be brighter than the store, than the
You
signage.
shouldn't see the element of the light, but you're going to see the residual light that
Sure,
still is
the
coming out,
spillage.
and it's going to light up the underside of the canopy and whatever it may be.
And those will be on 24/7, at night? You're 24/7, right?
We're 24/7.
Okay. That's all I have then.
Commissioner Steele?
Just have a question. When do you plan to open?
Very soon,
By the middle of July, maybe?
within the next few months.
Oh, you're not giving me any hint at all. My neighbors are asking me that. So, anyway, I don't have any comments. I like the staff recommendation.
Thank you so much for your support.
So I drove by your Lehigh store. The signage, comparing it to the Lehigh sign, how brighter or dimmer is it going to be?
It's going to be approximately half during the nighttime.
Okay, because I went there, it was after 10 o'clock. So do they dim their signs at all? Because it was pretty dim when I was looking at it from, I drove around and then whatever the street is across from Pioneer to see it, and it's pretty dim. The other thing that I noticed is the light from the store itself stays pretty much on the property, so I was pretty happy with that. That's all the comments I have, thanks.
Thank you.
So I too am really excited that you're moving there. You're actually directly west of my house. I just have to go all the way around the neighborhood just to get, but at least you're there. That's terrific. I have some questions regarding the code modification. First of all, on the planning packet, it said that this is administrative. I'm thinking this is legislative, probably.
It is legislative.
Okay,
yeah.
all right. So all the signs will be dimmed, but just the signs, right? The lighting is separate, and that will be under the regular lighting code. 50% will be turned off after, is that the 50? That still applies, okay, so that's still, all right, no problem. I was wondering why 100 feet from the, why 100 feet was chosen. The reason why I ask is automobile refueling stations have to be a minimum 500 feet from schools, parks, and playgrounds, and sexually oriented businesses can't be within 1,000 feet radius of any church, park, school, or residential zone. So was there a practical reason for the 100 feet?
So I was trying to take into consideration that it's not just for this one particular site. It is a citywide amendment. And so I know that there had been concerns with the Costa Vida sign, so I checked that location, and I actually measured the distance across the right-of-way to the nearest residential building. And it was 100 feet from the Costa Vida to the edge of the property line, and that's not even including the building setback that resident has.
Okay.
And so I was looking at other comparable areas in the city, looking at the Maverick site itself. It's like 200 feet from the nearest residential, and you also have the golf course, which it is zoned as residential, but it is mainly open space. And so I was just trying to get a good distance that wouldn't affect other areas of the code, but would also, be able to do a citywide adjustment that wouldn't cause issues with other residents.
Okay, so there was some kind of, a little bit of science involved in
Yeah.
choosing 100?
Yeah.
Okay, terrific. So I guess, I looked for the maximum illumination that we currently allow in the code. I couldn't find it, but you said it was two-foot candles per...
Currently, it's 2 foot.
Okay,
candle.
all right. So what does 1 foot candle look like? Is it, how dim is that? What's it like a...
So, like I mentioned before, it's the equivalent of having 12 birthday candles together.
Did you say that? I didn't even hear that, I'm sorry.
Birthday candles together.
12 birthday candles.
And you're
okay.
looking at it from a foot away.
Okay,
That's the equivalent.
all right, okay. Sorry, I didn't hear that part.
How bright is it at the distance that you're allowing it to be as close to residents?
That, I don't know.
Probably one candle.
Okay, and then, I I was going to ask about how the signage lighting will compare to all the other lighting that's going to be there too. And it sounds to me, based on what I've seen driving also on the Lehigh Maverick, that it's really insignificant because the canopy lighting will be pointed down, but there's still a puddle of light which almost is brighter than the sign lights too. So I didn't think it was very significant, to be honest. And then I also wondered, did the city council request a code amendment with the dimming requirement? And what about, because there's a lot, that was one of the, I think, suggestions, but I was wondering if they actually.
There's irony.
That was just dimmed by 50%.
Was that one candlelight or two candlelights?
Did you tell us how many candlelights that is?
That's 33%, and that's pretty big. So I was wondering, I know there was multiple, reading the minutes, that there were a lot of suggestions. Did they specifically request a code amendment to resolve this issue?
So it was benched for another time, and that's why Maverick actually applied to the city for the code amendment.
Oh, I see.
In May.
Okay. And then, I think this is the last question. What about, nope, you've already answered that question. Okay, thank you.
Hi there. So I have a question for you. Yes. This is going within, I could probably throw a stone at your location from my house. So, question is, the lighting that you have coming in, let's say that you didn't have any lights on your sign at all. What would that send as a message to people coming through? Since it's residential all around and there aren't really any other lights, what would happen if your lights were off?
If all of our lights are off, or if on the signage?
If you were to go according to the code as it is today without the amendment, what would happen to your business as people came by?
Well, I think that a lot of the locals would be, most likely be familiar with the site, but a lot of visitors, we fear that just wouldn't recognize the site. And so we feel that our business and our service would, and also our revenues would most likely drop.
Okay, so out of your personal opinion, this lumens or candlelight or whatever is we're saying, how bright is that? I mean, give me a comparison. Is it a flashlight pointed at a house from 150 feet? What is it?
I actually think what your staff has recommended.
She keeps saying a birthday cake, but I can't imagine.
She said birthday candles 12 together, but if you think about that distance, if that's looking at it from a foot away, 100 feet away from those 12 candles would be very dim.
I know we're talking about each bulb being that bright, right? So each letter, each number has that same power in the sign?
Well, it is not, if we have a light meter, we have light meters in our office. We can't take a light meter and go individually to one bulb because all the light is coming out together.
Okay.
So it's a combination of whatever's behind that face of the sign is what projects the light.
See, the reason I ask is because I have a Jeep, and I like to, all the headlights that you can get for a Jeep are in lumens, and it shows you the different powers, and it really depends, not on the lumens, but how focused it is and how far that light will go based upon the lens that's in there as well. So I'm just wondering how far that'll travel and what it will look like to these people. But given that nobody's here from that neighborhood, nobody's opposing it at all. Right, you are. And I'm from that neighborhood. Nobody's opposing it, then I think that's all the concerns I have. I just wanted to know what it's going to look like. But we're changing this, just so everybody knows, we're changing this for Saratoga Springs as a city, and if we go and change it back later at a date, places like this, they're going to be grandfathered in. You're not going to change it ever. So I'll entertain a motion.
I move based on the evidence and explanation you see today, to move a positive recommendation to the city council for the proposed code amendment, findings and conditions of the staff report dated today, June 21st, 2018.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
From Commissioner Kilgore? Is that you? Okay. Is there a question on the motion?
Yes.
Yes.
There are two different recommendations, and so one from the staff and one from Maverick. Which one are you going with?
The staff recommendation.
Okay.
Which, can you clarify that for
Can you
everybody?
bring it back up? So the staff proposed amendment as listed.
In red, right?
Yes.
Did you have a question, Commissioner Kilgore?
Staff one is the one with the 50% and all that.
It's
Okay.
50%
Yeah.
and part two, the illuminated sign shall be a minimum of 100 feet from the nearest residential building footprint.
I agree.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Okay, let's move on. Item number 5. This is a public hearing, to rezone to mixed residential from North Shore, located approximately 2300 West Saratoga Road. Crystal Travis from D.R. Horton is the applicant, and we'll turn the time over to Nora Shepherd for our presentation.
Good evening. Okay, so, most of you, and I think Chris even is familiar with it, even though he's new to the Planning Commission, are familiar with the North Shore neighborhood and sort of what we've gone through to get to where we are today. And this is one more piece of getting toward being able to approve a neighborhood plan for the North Shore area. Just for reference, the neighborhood plan is kind of confusing in my mind because some of the displays are north to south and some are tilted this way. So what I've done on a couple of these is I've turned them so that they're all north up in general, just because that's how my brain works. So the red is all what's considered the North Shore development. The lower right corner is the area that will be dedicated to the city for future marina or whatever. So the two areas that are outlined in black are areas that are currently within the city limits. So they were not a part of the annexation that we've been working on for the past year. These parcels were already in the city, so they didn't need to be annexed, but they do need a change in zoning. Because right now they're all ag. They're everything, well, the north and the south was zoned agricultural. When the annexation is finally recorded, which should be pretty much any day now, it will be zoned mixed residential. And so the proposal is for those little north and south pieces to also be zoned mixed residential, so that the whole area will work as a whole. As I mentioned, this is the one I turned, and I also added a new north arrow because the one on the plan is incorrect, which really confused me for a while. So the proposed zoning is mixed residential, and there are two areas, and they total 57.94 acres. This is a map of the zoning and land use that are adopted in our general plan, and then the zoning. As you can see, the areas that are being discussed are zone agricultural, and in the land use map, it's kind of a mix of things, but most of the entire North Shore area is either mixed waterfront or medium residential. There are some commercial areas that are shown as well, but most of it is medium residential and mixed waterfront. This one I did not turn, but this is the layout, the North Shore layout that you'll hear about later this evening. But just to give you an orientation of what we're talking about. So the criteria for the rezone, I included this in your staff report. So these are the criteria, and we're recommending that you forward a positive recommendation to the City Council and that it meets the criteria required. Any questions?
Thank you, Nora. We'll probably have questions for you in a little bit. Is the applicant here? Hello.
Hello. Crystal Travis, D.R. Horton. You know my address.
Okay, did you want to add anything to the presentation?
Not for the rezone. I think that we're good. It's pretty straightforward as to why we're asking for it, so.
Thank you. This is a public hearing, so we will open up public comment at this time for item number 5. If anybody has any comments on this item, come forward. Just making sure that nobody's mustering up the courage. Okay, we'll close public comment at this time and open it up for comment to the Planning Commission. Commissioner Carn.
No, I've got a couple of questions for you. Can you go back to the map that's got the blue and red sections? You know what I'm talking about? Yep, yeah. So the blue is the annexation that's going to be recorded, correct?
It's been all approved, the map is approved.
It'll be recorded with the new next residential zone.
Yes.
So tonight's action is just to change zoning on parcel A, parcel B. That is my only question I had. I'm familiar with the zone.
Any other comments from the Planning Commission on this one?
I did. Maybe my questions are not, okay, so let me just launch this out there, and then maybe it's not appropriate for what we're doing. I just now realized that we're only talking about the rezone. So I wanted more convincing about reducing the parking spaces for multifamily units would encourage walkability. Is that an appropriate topic right now? Not right now, okay. Then scrap that, so that's coming back later.
Next.
Okay, setbacks also not part of this, yep. Okay, okay, and then future, so maybe this also, where would the future potential commercial go and the flex space residential, so the commercial part, I guess? Do we need to zone for that, or is just by?
She wants to say something,
Yeah,
but
I
her
guess
microphone's not turning on.
Yeah.
It's part of the mixed residential, right, so?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it would be part of the neighborhood plan that's approved where
Yeah.
that flex area is, but what they're proposing is that it be down by the transit corridor.
Okay,
So, that makes logical sense. And if they were to decide they wanted to put some neighborhood commercial, it could be down there too. It's not shown in their current neighborhood plan, but
okay. Sorry, I just wrote down my comments as I read, so I didn't, okay, so, all right, I'm done.
Thank you. Commissioner Steele, you have anything?
No.
We've seen this a few times, so I'll entertain a motion.
Everybody got it?
I move to forward a positive recommendation to the City Council for the rezone of property currently zoned agricultural to mixed residential as outlined in the staff report with the findings and conditions in the staff report dated June 20th, 2018.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second?
We have a second from Commissioner Kilgore. Any question on the motion?
Is the date there correct?
Which date are you referring to?
20th, 2018?
the staff report was written on the 20th and it's going to be.
Okay. That's fine.
Okay. Any other questions?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. And you're going to stick around.
I'll just stay.
Let's go to item number
You guys
6
can come
then.
join me.
This is a work session. This is North Shore Neighborhood Plan, located approximately the same location as item number 5, 2300 West Saratoga Road. Crystal Travis is the applicant, and we will turn the time back over to Nora Shepherd for our presentation here.
I have a very brief presentation, just to kind of tee it up and let you know where we are in the process and those kinds of things. And then the applicant will give you a hopefully brief presentation about what their neighborhood plan encompasses. You've already, most of you, all but one, have already seen this, and we actually had a joint work session with the Planning Commission and City Council.
I was there.
You were there?
Virtually.
Okay.
Can you turn on your mic?
Virtually, excellent.
Yeah, sorry, I was there.
So it's not a rezone request. Anyway, this is one of the many processes that are necessary in order for the North Shore development to happen. And it depends on the rezone occurring, annexation of the land, which again is very close to actually being official. And with that annexation, it's being zoned mixed residential. We created the mixed residential zone. And then there's also a request along with the neighborhood plan for a preliminary plat for phase 1. And the staff won't really review that in detail until we nail down a little bit more about the neighborhood plans, because there are still some engineering concerns and things we're playing around with. So the process is a new process, and it's a little bit like the community village plan, but what we tried to do in the mixed residential zone is stick to our existing code requirements as much as possible. So there's a new chapter in 1904 of the Saratoga Springs Code that specifically is for the neighborhood plan. There's also an added column in all of the use tables and the standard tables. So the process as set forth is that the Planning Commission conducts a public hearing on a neighborhood plan and then makes a recommendation to the City Council. The City Council is the land use authority, so they're the ones who actually approve it. And then preliminary plats come in, which are more definitive and give us kind of more detail. And then final plats ultimately. So tonight is a work session only, as I mentioned, the presentation by the applicant. And then we can have some question and answer amongst all of us. And then what we'd like is just some preliminary feedback from you folks as we move forward. The planning staff has given them one round of comments on their plan, and I just sent those to her last week. Engineering is getting very close to sending their comments. So your comments will go sort of along with all those when they look at making revisions. But then we'll come back to you at a future meeting for action. That's it. With that, I'll turn it over to Brazil, or back to you, Chair.
And now there are three. Would the other two of you please introduce yourselves for the record?
My name is Corey Shoup. I'm with Blue Line Designs. We're landscape architects and planners.
Thank you.
Mike Althorn with Community One.
Hello and welcome. Did you have any other comments you wanted to make?
We have a presentation, so we would like to go through that. I gave Nora a copy of it earlier. She can pull that up for us.
North Shore MP. Yep.
And I really like the blue hue. It blends really well.
It's good for your eyes.
So we're glad to be here tonight. Hopefully most of what you see tonight is not a change from what you've seen in the past. Our site plans haven't really changed. There's been a few shifts of things. We've taken the information that we've gathered from everyone in the past in our work sessions and we've put it into this neighborhood plan. Hopefully, from the staff report, it looks like Nora's done a pretty thorough thing and review, and we're in compliance with most things. We're here tonight to get your feedback and input and introduce you to what we're calling North Shore. The latest and greatest for Saratoga Springs by D.R. Horton. So, can we get the clicker? Thank you. So, it's throwing, north is up. You saw this slide in Nora's presentation. That's the area that we're talking about. It's 136 acres. We're proposing 1,156 units. So our gross density is 8.45. We will deed to the city the 19.6 acres that includes the current marina for your use. So developable land is 117.1 acres. That's where our 156 units will sit. And that on the net acreage moves us up to 9.87 units to the acre. Through the MI zone, we're allowed to have 8 units to the acre. If we then donate city property, or we have a transit station proposed, or neighborhood commercial, we have the potential of getting to 10 units to the acre as granted by city council. 12 units to the acre. But as you can see, we're in the 10 units to the acre range, but we are planning to do both of those kinds of things. So Pony Express Parkway is slated to extend through the property. We are proposing that a transit stop would be there. That's one of the requests the city has made. We're fine with that. Here is our neighborhood plan. The different colors, and I apologize, my screen's blue, so it all looks a little bit different. But we've got 5 housing types that we're proposing in this neighborhood. Some single-family lots, what we call cottage lots. We've got townhomes that are front-loaded and townhomes that are rear-loaded, and then we'll have an apartment condo section, which you can see that's the darkest, most intense. So this map is shaded for intensities, and you can see those densities off to the side there. This is our master transportation plan. It's got several different road types, most of which are public. We are asking, so this is North Shore Boulevard, which is this purple spine road that goes all the way down the middle. This is one road where we are asking for a slight variation. The asphalt widths and the cross-section are the same as your 59-foot local road. We've increased it by 1 foot. We're asking that it be a public road with that difference in size. The reason for that is that we anticipate in meeting with the utility companies, we'll have a 1 million amp line that has to run down our spine. So just like in Legacy Farms along Schoolhouse Road where we had to have additional setbacks and a wider park strip to accommodate that, we're asking for that same accommodation in here. And that roadway, so the 2-foot curb, the 29 feet of asphalt, that meets the same section as your 59-foot cross-section. Just so you can see that. That's one thing that we need your input and consideration on. So the next roads are our local roads. Most of them are there. They meet your cross-section and they would be public. The next section that we're looking at is what we're calling shared drives. These would sit in front of our front-loaded townhomes. They'd have a 20-foot setback to the building, and they would be private and maintained by the homeowners association. Then we have our rear lanes. These go on our rear-loaded townhomes. It's got a 26-foot. It's got a 26-foot asphalt, well, drivable surface with a 2-foot ribbon curb. It's not raised. So in meeting with Chief Campbell, he was fine with this as long as he had 26 feet of drivable space. So there's not a raised curb. It's much like what you see in Legacy Farms in our shared lanes there. So it's got a 2-foot ribbon and the 24, but we learned from our mistakes and there are no trees in the middle of the asphalt. so those are the road types that we have in this plan. You can see here that we are proposing to do this neighborhood in 4 phases. We have submitted our preliminary plat application for phase 1, which is the darker blue to the south and then up against Saratoga Road. So part of the neighborhood plan is that we need to win you over with our character and theme, and so that's what we're going to focus mostly on, and that's what these guys are here for. So through this presentation, we'll give you these 4 points and show you how we're supporting it. Our architecture is one of the main points. We will, like Legacy Farms, have 5 different types of architecture so that we're getting variety and differences in the buildings. And we're in compliance with what you guys have in your city code. Parks, open space, and trails. And this is where I hand it over here to Corey, and he's going to wow.
That's why we get paid the big bucks, because we get to play and have all the fun. What you're looking at here is, like Chriselle already said, is our parks, open space, and trails. You have reviewed this before, and you have one. as my understanding, and it's a little hard to see on the screen, but basically this just outlines the major trails and minor trails that crisscross throughout the community. And you'll get more information as we get deeper into these plans, and we have other illustrations that highlight that. This is the overall open space call out, and it's really difficult to see here because all the text is small, but those boxes that you're seeing that call out are the individual amenities per each of those parks and open spaces. And we'll now take you deeper into each one of those and highlight really what's going on within those and how we have been able to tie them all together with the North Shore theme and what some of those amenities are. So the first park that we're going to look at is called The Beach. This is our main park, and it's the one that's outlined there in the center of the project. This is a zoom in of what is going on in that particular park. What you're seeing here is the clubhouse, a splash pad, pavilion, and then a major park there to the what would be the east side, but the top side, thank you. And that's a major play park. And then to the right side, or south, however you're looking at that, is the pickleball, basketball, kind of a multi-use court, and then another pavilion, and then further to the south, volleyball.
We'll also add a pool.
Yes, that's not being shown here.
We'll have a pool as well.
That is new to this, and we really like this layout, so you'll probably see a lot of similarities, but we have been challenged to now introduce a pool, which we think is going to be another great community asset. So this is a perspective of what you're seeing there. Obviously the clubhouse to the right, the lighthouse main entry monument there to the left in the background. You can start to see some of the amenity with the play structure in the middle. We have really tried to push the envelope a little bit with how we introduce North Shore elements. So we've got this netted kind of elevated crosswalk that would potentially go between some structures that would represent boats and some other pillars that are wrapped in some rope. You're going to see a lot of that throughout, but we're really trying to create something that's really pretty unique to Utah and would really reinforce this North Shore theme. The walkway you see there is representative. There will be areas where we will have a little bit of a boardwalk, and where it's not actually board, then we're going to be scoring or stamping concrete to represent wood boardwalk. It's not really recommended to do it in all areas because not all areas are going to make sense. Where we're going to be shoveling areas and other things, and where it just doesn't make sense, we won't do actual boardwalk, but there will be some areas, and we'll show those as we go along. So the next park is right here, the Sails. This park is located between residential units that front onto this park. There are a number of elements. Again, you're seeing the sails. This is the theme that we've tried to pick up rather than always just having pavilions. We've tried to introduce, we've used these sails in other parks that we've done. I'm sure you're familiar with them. One that's popping into my mind right now is we did do one in Sandy that's over a water feature, and it's a lot of fun. We've gotten a lot of great feedback from that. But being a North Shore project, we have tried to introduce as much of these sails as we can for shade from others and patrons that come to the parks. And so you'll see that a lot. There's also, let me go to this perspective, this rock wall that we have here in the park that provides a play element, more of a kind of terra play. This rock wall is probably 4, 5, maybe 6 feet at the very peak. This again is another element that we're seeing in park design. We are currently under construction on a separate project in Kaysville. Their rock wall is actually 8 feet tall. But again, it's a really exciting draw. It sounds simple, but that is simple play, and that is kind of the terra play, is the kids are really enjoying just being able to scale those walls and being able to choose the variety within that wall, not always having to go to maybe a climbing structure that's bolted to a play structure. This is more natural play. And then you can see another kind of fun feature underneath those sails is the nets. Something that is unique again to this that we haven't seen that we're excited to try, and this is basically just kind of nautical rope that is netted together and under those sails that kids can pile on, climb under, climb around, and we're really looking forward to that natural play. Okay, our next park is the North Park. Again, this is a park for residents. Well, for the whole community, but you can see that in this park what we've tried to do is, I'm trying to remember the word that we use. It's not maze, but it's a fancy word for connectivity within a community. And essentially that's what you're seeing here. We're using some berms to separate, but then also you're seeing this photo down in the bottom. We have introduced this kind of feature throughout North Shore, and that's hammocking. There are poles that are placed throughout that make it really easy for teenagers to come in and quickly attach hammocks. We've done a number of these parks up and down the Wasatch Front, and but this is taking it kind of to another level where you're seeing the thematic throughout the entire community, not just in one park. So our next park is the South Bay Park. You can see it outlined there. This is what South Bay is. It's got a pavilion, a large tot lot area, and then this amphitheater. Those are those lines that you're seeing curving into the larger grass area. It's anticipated that we'll be able to potentially set up a movie night or whatever where people could come in and sit in that amphitheater, but then on a projection they could project a movie every once in a while. But we wanted to do a large open play area for someone that wants to kick a ball, throw a ball, fly a kite, whatever. It's not always just the small spaces, but this is a pretty large space. And I haven't been mentioning this, but with every one of these parks is a sign, a locator sign, and you'll see those a little later on. You can see them here on the north and the south, or the right and the left. There's those dots. I can't really use my mouse, but, I'll point those out when we get to them. This is a quick sketch of what that might look like. In each of these perspectives, do know that we've removed a lot of trees so that you can actually see what's going on in there. For example, those hammocks that you're seeing there on the right side, they would be intermingled, those poles would be intermingled with some other trees, but in order to illustrate it, we've removed some of that. You can see the sail kind of play structure in the back to the left of the pavilion, and then some other nautical poles that would be wrapped in rope there along the hill for, again, a more natural kind of play. Kids can stand on them, balance on them, try to jump from one to the other. And our next park, there it goes, sorry, I bounced right past it, let me back up. This is Dock Park, a little bit of a play on words. Instead of dog park, it's Dock Park. This one I think is really fun. We, as designers, had a lot of fun with this one, and think it's going to be something that you're going to see more and more after it gets done. This is a dog park, but as designers, we struggle with dog parks a lot because they get overrun, and the grass is difficult to survive. So what we've created here is basically a dog beach, and it has two islands within the dock park that will be mounted, and you can get the softer grass play there, but everything within that's not the island is basically a beach park for dogs. So they'll be able to run and do everything the dogs do, and the owners will too. But what we've done for the owners is we've created these docks that come out and extend into this beach area, so that when the owners take the dogs there, they can actually have a place to sit on. There's sails that go over the top of those. They can sit on the dock like it was a regular dock, let the dogs run around, mingle with their neighbors, have a conversation, have a place that's shaded, and actually be interactive, which we think is going to be really fun. And then some other features within there, some other rocks and other things that people can either choose to sit on and watch or whatever, if the docks are full with other people. There's also that large anchor that's out on the corner to be kind of an icon, if you will, for North Shore. It's in the logo, and we felt like this would be a fun element. And then there's, again, the community marker, which you'll see more of. Quick sketch, you can see those docks that extend out underneath those sails, and the dog beach, and then those mounds, which will really be kind of fun, playful elements, and then the homes that front onto that park. Again, I think DR's done a great job of trying to think through the livability of these spaces, and then fronting those homes onto the parks where they can, I think, is a great touch. Another park, this is Driftwood Park. Again, trying to think of what elements you might see when you're walking on the beach. Driftwood Park, we have this large element out front, which is again a beach type element, but then the washed up kind of wood elements that can be great to look at, but also fun kind of simple play elements as you walk by the park. And then again, this has got more hammocking in there that could be used, and some more berming. A simple way to reinforce the overall theme of beach and North Shore. You can see the driftwood down there in the bottom. Another, for a long while there, we were always seeing play elements as plastic and other kind of not exciting things. We're now trying desperately as designers to reintroduce this natural play, and I think Driftwood Park does that in an awesome way that also reinforces the community design. I've got a lot of parks here, so sorry I'm running through so many, but this is the good stuff.
Almost done, clubhouse.
Clubhouse. Here's what you're looking at for the clubhouse. Again, total kind of Cape Cod reinforcing of North Shore, and it's going to be a real community element. These are just, it's a map of monumentation and wayfinding. I'll now take you through each one of these. It's 4 basic designs of what you can expect to see at North Shore. So the one monument to the upper left is, I'll bounce back so you can kind of see this. This monument is the one that you're seeing at the very top left corner. That's going to be the large kind of pillars with wrapped rope with the North Shore logo placed on it. The other 2 logos are community markers. I'll bounce back again. Oops, too far? No, we're good. The community secondary sign and then the community markers are what you're looking at here on those 2. So those were the signs that I was saying are in each park is the one that you're seeing on the right, and that will have the park name on it and be a locator. The other one is for neighborhood type monumentation. And then as you've seen before, this is the lighthouse that will be out. I'll bounce back twice. You can kind of see where it goes. Right there, it's difficult to see because it's small, but it's the hexagon right there on the kind of the south portion of the clubhouse property, the beach, if you will. And I'll bounce back to it.
There's one more thing on the scale.
Yep, now you'll see the scale of what that is. So, pretty impressive, should be a great community marker, easy to identify with. And then that's the end of my presentation. So
we're excited about the open spaces. I think that it's really going to lend itself to the theme and the nature that we're trying to promote here in North Shore. The next few slides are just our lotting standards. So we'll just go through it fairly quickly. On these slides, you'll see the highlight on the left side, you'll see where those are oriented within our neighborhood plan. You'll see a sample of what that architecture may look like, and then, our lotting standards. So that was the single family. These are our cottage lots. Again, let me just flip back to that one. This is our Cape Cod style that we've introduced for this, so that you can see the different style. All the other styles were based on Legacy Farms. The one we removed from Legacy Farms was the Prairie. We won't be offering that in this one. So these are the cottage lots. You can see there on the left that a majority of them are to the north. Our townhomes are located in several locations. So the ones that are highlighted here are our front-loaded just like Legacy Farms, this is our farmhouse style. And then, again, these are our rear-loaded products. They front along Saratoga Road and along a lot of those open spaces. And the apartments, we don't have a product yet because we anticipate we'd be selling this pad to someone else, and we don't want to lock them into something, but they will have to comply with the architectural standards that you've seen. It'd have to fit into one of those 5 styles and comply with your Section 19. So here, just as so you can see them all together, this is our lotting plan for North Shore. You can see how it all works and the shades are distorted on my blue screen, so I have to look. But, and then there are some constraints that we're looking at. We are aware that there is a floodplain. As you know, we are filling that very vigorously to be able to bring those homes out of the floodplain from the Jordan River. We've also had a firm go out and look and analyze for wetlands, so we're working with the city on those things, and those will all be addressed with our approvals in the future. Again, the final park that we have for you guys is what we would be donating to the city. We wouldn't be doing any of the development, so the palette is just totally up to you. But this is what could happen in those marina areas, very simplistically, or if you want to be more extensive. You guys have all kinds of opportunities on that 20 acres for commercial pads as well as great features for the whole citywide use. But that is North Shore, and we're happy to take any questions that you guys may have. Thanks. We'll go back to the lotting plan.
Commissioner Steele? Wait a minute. This is a work session, so. Actually, let's just turn it over to Commissioner Steele.
Okay. You have done a phenomenal job with the amenities and the parks.
Thank you.
With keeping with the theme. I only wish that you had done as good a job with your elevations on your homes. I think you say you're bringing them from Legacy Farms, and that was the last thing we wanted to see. I knew I was disappointed and that it wasn't quite what I expected, and so I went to Eastern Shore Architecture. The one thing on all of the homes that I saw, and I probably saw maybe 30 that were done, they all had a usable porch. And that's, I think, what I was thinking of when I thought, you know, these just don't look like waterside or beachfront or anything houses. These look like the farm. And so I would, there's one that has the shingles on it. That's one of the cottages that comes nearer, but it still doesn't have the porch. I'd like to see you all go back to the drawing board on that. The other thing, I don't even have my notes with me. I think they've been forwarded to you.
Yeah.
When you appeared before us before, you didn't want to put any neighborhood commercial in because it would be so far out. And how could we expect you to hold land open or buildings open? And yet you're asking for us to, or suggesting that we give you parking reduction. And again, and that's because it's near a transit area, but that transit is so far out, I could not think that we would be doing anyone a favor by reducing parking. Another thing that bothers me, and we don't have it in our code, so we can't require it, but I'm sure you're going to sell this with the thought that people will use the lake. They'll want to put, have a boat so that they can go fishing or skiing or whatever. And yet the lots are so small, they're not going to be able to store those on their own property. And we don't have any place to store those. And so I know you would lose some units, but to me, that would be an amenity that would be needed in that area. And the other thing I'm concerned about, did you do a soils report before you started putting the fill in?
Yes.
What did it show?
A mix of clay, sandy loam, groundwater tables between 6 and 2 feet, depending on where we were in the 117.
Okay. So that's going to mean that some of your product probably won't be having basements.
Correct. A lot of the product, which is what is oriented towards the south, so most of the townhomes are slab on grade. From about our clubhouse, just a little bit past our beach park and the clubhouse, we start to pick up where we could get basements. But most of that product to the south is going to be just slab on grade. But we are elevating the land by about 5 feet. And so we will be well above those watermarks and be able to look at those conditions as we go through the project.
Well, we have another project tonight that has done a study, and it's very similar territory. And it calls out some of the building methods that would be required because it's a high liquefaction area. And it calls out in some areas to remove the soil that's clay and get it down to a sandy soil or a soil that will hold, probably not sandy, but anyway. And so how are you going to do that when you've already put all this fill on there? You're going to have to pull that fill out and then go down too.
Right. So our footings have to sit on the native soil, and we will follow recommendations of our soils engineers. The plan is to certify a pad that's outside of the floodplain elevation, and then as we progress through the site, we need fill on the whole 117 acres. So where we would be excavating for a building, that material would be moved and placed to bring up the next pad out of the floodplain. So it'll be kind of a leapfrog, and we'll be moving a lot of dirt in this project, but we have thought through that process, and our engineers are consulting and making sure that that with Gordon's approvals will be safe and meet all the building codes that are required.
Well, we have a soils report from your engineer.
It was submitted with our preliminary plat, so it's in with the city now.
Okay. Will it be a part of this neighborhood plan? Because I don't think we will see the plats. We will? Yeah. Okay. I thought that was one of the things that was taken from our purview.
You may be right. If there's a specific lotting plan and it's consistent. That's specifically for community plan. So you will see the preliminary plan.
Okay.
The geotechnical report will be in an appendix for this neighborhood plan. And the neighborhood plan's still under development.
Okay. That was what I wanted to hear. I think my other comments have been forwarded to you, and so.
Thank you.
Those were the main ones.
Thank you. We appreciate that.
Others?
I have a couple questions. Assuming all the parks are private for the HOA, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Other than the Harbor Park, you guys can make that whatever you want.
Right. So you addressed my question on the Harbor Park. On your community marker, your lighthouse. Is that taller than the water tower?
Yes.
How much taller?
It's planned to be 45 feet.
How tall is the water tower?
26 to 30.
Wow. It's quite a bit bigger. Okay, and then on some of your private streets, when you talk to the chief, and you've got a 26 wide drivable surface, I'm assuming there'll be no parking on those?
Correct.
Okay. And I don't think I had any other questions on this. I think I'm good.
Any other comments from Planning Commission? Ken?
Just had a couple comments. I like the parks. I like the ideas. The theming is great. I would have liked a little bit more information about the signage,
Okay?
the sizes and stuff, but I think we'll see that later. I'm hopeful. I was a bit disappointed with just the 4 or 5 examples of the houses that we saw. I'm hoping we can see more examples later on. And I like the idea of the signs with the poles and the rope around, because I've been in other coastal communities. The work that I do, I travel all over the country. I've even traveled international, and a lot of times when you go to beaches around the United States or even other places, they have stuff like that that marks where different things are. So I like that idea. That's all I have.
Commissioner Kilgore.
So now I'll get to the questions. I need a little bit more convincing that reducing parking spaces for multifamily units will encourage walkability. Because I was thinking, like, during the winter, for example, when new families who might go into some of the smaller options, smaller home options, especially if they have toddlers and strollers, and maybe Costco diaper boxes and all this stuff, wouldn't they just crowd the near street parking if they don't have a lot of, or maybe I don't know if I should say standard, but some of the more at-home parking. And I was just wondering if you've had put some thought to that as far as like walkability, and I mean I guess that is making them walk, but it would then crowd the streets. I guess that's my concern. So I'm not sure that if reducing parking would actually contribute to walkability while keeping a free-flowing street. So I was just wondering if you've had some thoughts on that.
You want that one? When we refer to the reduction in parking, and I can't remember in here that we've actually asked for that, but I know that we've discussed it in the past.
It was on one of your pages.
That would be just simply mostly for the apartment section. Within the townhome areas, we are proposing that everything have a 20-foot driveway attached to it, and then we've also got guest parking clustered in those housing areas on our lotting plans. So when we talk about the reduction in parking spaces, we're really only referring to the areas that are the apartment complexes. The site plan that you see now does comply with your current code. And we foresee that discussion would happen with plating or preliminary platings, and maybe I might be wrong on that one, but that section would come to you as its own submittal, and you would have that opportunity to discuss it. But as far as what we've got here and what we've shown, it complies with your current code.
Okay.
We're going to leave that discussion to whoever and it may end up being us. Our apartment people are looking at it now, and it may be a local developer, but that's what we foresee as far as the parking.
Okay.
And those discussions.
I bring it up because, you do mention it on your general description, and you actually say something about reducing parking may contribute to walkability. So when that time does come, and when you have your specific plans, I'd probably ask more about that, because I like to see how you connect reducing parking to walkability, even in an apartment complex. So that's just feedback.
Right, and we'll be more prepared for that when we do actually have the approval for this work session. I'm not prepared to discuss all that. We have researched it and we do have some information.
Great, okay.
And just to add a little bit more clarity to the issue of the reduction in parking, if you'll recall, when we were in here and we were discussing the MR zone, one of the things that we kind of raised as an issue as it pertained to parking and multifamily relative to apartments was the gap that exists between what the market is doing and what your ordinance are saying. And, I think Chriselle raises a great point that the time to really hone in on the issue is when there's an actual plan in front of you so that we can address it as it is. Because right now it's pretty, I guess, for lack of a better word, fluffy for all of us to try and figure out the issue when we don't have enough details in front of us to truly address it holistically.
Okay. Yeah, so again, just as feedback, since it was in your general description, and you equated reduction of parking with walkability, that's why I said I'm not convinced. And so as feedback, I hope that we could get more into that when the time is right.
I've got a note on it, thank you.
Okay. On your, there's a, let's see, let me find the page. There's a diagram where it looks like maybe there might be, it's a really small discrepancy, but on the rear loaded, so this is page 34 of the packet that we received from you, and it, under the, in the second half, the lower half, the rear loaded townhome setback, under the principal building driveway, the table says, what is this, less than 5 feet or greater than 18 feet, but the diagram next to it says less than 4 feet or greater than 18 feet. Is that?
There are a number of...
We caught that as an issue, and I corrected it in this slide right here. You'll see that we've got it as 5 feet or 18 foot or less.
And it's a foot, but that's still 20%. Right. So, okay.
Right.
Terrific.
So
Thank you.
we've caught that, but thanks for pointing that out.
Okay. Do you have on, let's see, what page? So on page 37, you have a diagram of the North Shore Drive. Now, I was wondering, did you have any thoughts to putting bike lanes on North Shore Drive? And the reason I ask is I thought on one of your parks, or maybe one of the trails, you had mentioned like some BMX elements, and just wondering if therefore there might be some bikes, in the North Shore Drive that crosses the entire community.
So we would stripe the same as your local roads, but the part of the reason too is we've got an 8-foot trail that runs on that boulevard, and that could become useful for the bikes as well.
Okay.
So, yeah, I mean, with 29 feet of asphalt, there's plenty of room for striping and parking.
All right. I was wondering if engineering at this point has any issues with the request for the 1-foot addition to the roads to 60 feet rather than the 59 feet standard, I guess?
No.
Okay. How succinct you are, because I'm not so succinct. So, and then I guess they had also requested the same for Legacy Farms. So if that's the case, in order to put that utility in, so if that's the case, then should 60 feet be the new standard, or is 59 still adequate for most of the city?
59 is adequate.
Okay, so it just happens to be these two developments that just requires an extra foot?
Well, so I'm not familiar with their request, but there's not a problem with additional width. They have a particular purpose for it, but we're not seeing that need elsewhere in the city.
Okay, I guess 59 is just the minimum.
So the street width is the same, right? The asphalt on the road that you drive down, our extra foot is in the park strips and in the sidewalk, rather than having a 5-foot sidewalk like you've got in your 59. We're asking to put a 6-foot park strip and an 8-foot walking path as part of our community theme, and being able to connect that connectivity, as well as we know that we are, because we've got almost 1,200 units in this, we're going to have a large demand for power. So we want to be prepared. Those boxes that go with that 1,000,000 amp are 12 feet by 14 feet, and they have a vault that sits underneath them. So we're just forward thinking and trying to accommodate that space and plan for it wisely.
So now we'll need to have discussions about conflicts with other utilities, because we count on those park strips for our pressure water lines.
Right.
Secondary on one side, drinking water on the other side. So we'll have to have some discussions about potential conflicts with the utility that they're talking about.
Okay.
So one other small issue, there's an issue that's going to be coming up that's going to be small cell tower infrastructure. And if we open up to 60 foot, it could trigger that being allowed in those park strips, which may or may not be an unintended consequence that we want to consider beforehand. So I don't want to stop anything, but I think we may need to caveat that we need to look at that, because that extra foot could be problematic for us in small cell towers springing up now all along this pathway.
So it sounds like, at least just based on preliminary discussion, that it's best to keep it at 59 feet and then consider the additional as requests as they come in. So I just wanted to know if it was just, if it is time to start thinking about a larger road, if we've already had two major developments that required it, but it sounds like that's not really the way we want to go.
No, there's, larger's not better.
Right.
Ideal is ideal. Of course, Chriselle already mentioned that the pavement width is not increasing, and increasing pavement width is not, the wider the pavement gets, the more problems we have with traffic calming and so forth. So there's an ideal width we like to stick to.
Okay.
But, so we're talking about park strips, and, we just haven't developed those discussions yet.
Okay. Thank you. And then just, I think this is my last comment. So I live in a neighborhood that has a private marina. I actually haven't, I don't want to show my kids your plans because it just looks so cool for, my teenage kids, and I appreciate it, especially with the time you took with the parks and all the amenities that you're providing, and it is really great. It's kind of like very modern type of thing that kids are doing. My kids will find any tree that they could put their hammocks on, and it's great that you're providing all that for them already. But one thing, just another comment, just some feedback. In my neighborhood, almost every house has 3 garages. These are standalone homes. Even the townhomes have at least two-car garages, and it's for their boats. Our neighborhood also has private roads, and so a lot of people would like to run around in their ATVs on our roads. So it's either for ATV or for boats. And so since you are creating the nautical theme, and you'll also be very close to a potential marina, that might be a consideration. I counted on my block alone, 20% of homes not only have 3-car garages, but also a boat garage. One of the garages is like one of those large boat garages. So I think I think maybe Commissioner Steele had mentioned it, but the idea of having enough room for the kind of clientele that you may be attracting is probably key, especially for the single-family homes with, as far as garages for their boats and other equipment that they'll have. So just something for you to consider, as well as driveway space.
In terms of the comparison, you're probably speaking correctly in regards to the single-family detached homes that are at the north end of the project. However, when you look at North Shore as a whole, when you look at the lotting plan, for example, and you look at the other products that are being offered, you're talking about demographics that it's probably going to be a bit more challenging for them to afford the water toys. And so, and the other thing to take into consideration is the lifestyle that goes along with the different housing products relative to issues of maintenance and so forth, which frankly don't speak to the aspect of having to maintain boats, watercraft, and so forth. So I think a lot of that will bear out. The market will kick in. There's property around this area that will probably materialize in terms of boat, RV, watercraft storage, but it won't be indicative to the community as a whole, other than maybe the north end, and not speaking directly for D.R. Horton's products, but I believe that most of their single-family stuff includes options for third-car garages and things that would accommodate what you're referring to, which is similar to your neighborhood.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. So the neighborhood that I've lived in was built in phases, and we moved in 19 years ago in the first phase, which are very smaller, much smaller homes. It was meant to be a new family / retirement community, and so the idea was young families or older families, and yet the homes do have fewer garages. However, the people still have their boats. I had my boat 20 years ago. So luckily, I had a two-car or three-car garage and driveway. Most people don't have three-car garages in that particular neighborhood for that demographic, but they're still putting their boats on their driveways. And so that's, all I'm saying is it's just feedback. I don't think it really matters if it is a new family or not. When they can, they'll get their boats, because that's why they moved, maybe that's one of the reasons why they moved to North Shore. It's precisely for that access to the lake, marina nearby, all the great amenities you're providing that's got the nautical theme, and then the first thing they want to buy when they have the ability to, just as they did in my neighborhood, is watercraft. And then I subsequently moved to the third phase, where there are more mature families, and they're the ones with the big boat garages and such. So maybe you're not building for that, but still, even the younger families, I think, will appreciate if you consider. I'm not saying you create a boat storage. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that just consider the fact that they may have those kinds of toys right away. In fact, I even know a couple families that put off having kids until they've paid off their boats. So that happens, especially in our neighborhood, in our city.
So all the products that you do see, large or small, have a two-car garage in them, and if they were to choose to park their boat or their four-wheeler or whatever in their garage and park one of their cars out in the driveway, that's kind of the accommodation that we're seeing. We also control that through our CCNRs.
Okay. And then just, maybe boat storage is one of the commercial uses that
That's what I was going to suggest. It's a lucrative business for the city.
Yeah, when we were out of the country for a few years, and we had nowhere to put our boat. We had to take it down to Orem.
Right.
So, nothing, now that was 8 years ago, but again, in this area, including West Lehigh, there was no boat storage that we could, a long-term boat storage or anything that we could put, so it might be one idea for commercial use.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
To staff, isn't there a property owner north of this development that was looking to put RV boat storage?
Joe Hansen, I believe, on the corner.
Yes, Joe Hansen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are they looking to be annexed in, or are they already in?
They are annexed. We annexed them recently.
Okay.
And they are allowed to continue that boat/vehicle storage until they develop it.
Right.
And then they have to, with some.
It was like a 5-year plan or something, wasn't it?
Yeah, and then they have to upgrade the site, and it's zoned, industrial?
It's right almost just north of this property.
Yeah.
But they will probably develop before these guys are halfway through, I would think.
I don't know, perhaps.
Okay.
Yeah, it's industrial.
But it's right next to it, though. There's boat storage there.
Yeah, although it's not a real, big commercial
I know.
operation. It's more like families and friends.
Okay.
But it could be.
The agreement allows them to do more extensive boat and RV.
I remember they were going to put up some fencing and some gravel parking lot for that.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay.
That's it for me, by the way.
Okay. Commissioner Steele, you had a couple comments?
I just wanted to, I forgot, in the architecture, your clubhouse with the playhouse structure with it, it seems out of proportion.
Nora mentioned that you had that concern. I think it's the angle that we've rendered it at. It looks a little bit bigger. It would be proportionate. We've hired architects and things to make that work. So I think it's the angle of the picture that you're seeing that might distort that view.
If you went in the true style of some of the lighthouses, they would go off to one side and have the lighthouse keepers accommodations next to it. And that would probably make it less what I'm seeing. And a new elevation would be nice to see. Can you talk, I know you talked about the school district, which might want to put a school in there.
We have talked to them. They feel like there's a need maybe for a junior high. If everything goes forward, they don't see it with this project, they see it nearby. We are talking to other landowners and trying to acquire more, and that would be one of the things that we could possibly consider there.
And the reason I ask is that the road that goes north and south.
North Shore Boulevard.
And you've got that as a local road. We're seeing a transportation plan tonight, and the local roads that used to be a collector and got changed before you started your project. Now, our traffic report, or our master transportation plan says it needs to be widened. And so I'm wondering if that is truly a local road, because I see it where it connects to the north. And so it's just something I will be asking the people tonight for the transportation plan.
So the main transportation corridor will be 2300 West, Old Saratoga Road and Pony Expressway. So that's why it's considered a local road, because most of the traffic is going to stay exterior of the project.
There's an awful lot of, still a lot of homes on that, and especially if the school goes in to the north and all. I'm going to ask them tonight what they think.
Yeah, we appreciate that. Thanks.
Okay, and I think
I had two more. Can I ask them?
Go ahead.
Sorry.
I'm very patient.
These are easy ones. These
I'm
are for
always
staff.
last anyway, so good.
Since this is going to be rezoned mixed residential, right?
Right.
Well, the city council will make that change.
Yes.
So this will be different than Legacy Farms, where the zoning was changed with each phase. We've zoned the entire thing. The whole project will be zoned at the start.
It's already, it will have
It
already
will-
been zoned as
right.
residential.
Right. So my question, I've got two questions around that. How will the transit corridor be maintained long-term before transit comes through? What's the condition of that going to be? Is it just going to go to weeds? And as the project is developed, will the developer be held to keeping weeds down and such because it's not agricultural? I know that a lot of the residents around Legacy Farms and existing homes were very upset that the developer allowed weeds to grow because it was agricultural and not zoned residential until right before they started developing.
Right.
And so the weeds would grow high, and according to those residents, they'd say, well, we contact the developer, they say it's ag, they don't have to do it. Because this is MR, what are the requirements to maintain weed control during development in undeveloped areas?
So part of the difference with this property and Legacy Farms property is that Legacy Farms was in an agricultural protection zone prior to our development, and it remained in that as it was developed. This land does not have that benefit, so we would be compliant with your current city codes.
6-inch weed control?
Right, if that's what it is, that's what we would have to comply with. And as well as with any SWIP regulations that are in play as well.
And in the transit corridor, what are you going to do with that between phase
So
one
in
and
our
two?
annexation agreement, it was agreed that that would be planted and maintained by the city in some kind of maintainable condition.
Now I'm done.
Can I answer that, though? We're not going fancy with that landscaping since it's going to get torn out. We're not, I mean, this is native landscaping, so, don't have high expectations of it.
Not too native.
And yes, I saw Sandra roll her eyes.
So the city's got to maintain 6-inch weed control as well?
Yes.
Yes. It depends on.
That's an administrative
are we going
question.
for shrubs? It's not something that we don't do a great job of maintaining open space, the natural open space. It grows, we plant it with native grasses, with native plants, and that is the landscaping that's there. So, don't have high expectations is all I'm suggesting.
I thought it was 6 inches, like 2 feet from the road. I thought that was.
No, I mean, any property, I think, has to have, if you got more than 6 inches, that's a code violation.
No, yeah, but I thought for the city, it was only, wasn't it? It was only a certain distance from the road rather than the entire field.
Like, for example, we have a native park up in Benches 10, I think, and that's over 12, or, that's not maintained at 6 inches, so don't get that expectation. It's native grasses, it's native, it's a native area. We've allowed for that in some of the other neighborhoods, Mount Saratoga, wildflower. We've got other areas that are going to have these native areas, and, you know, oftentimes we'll get people come in and say, hey, you need to maintain this. Well, that's exactly what it was planted for. Those are the cheat grasses or the things that were planted in those areas. So, I mean, just be real honest with you. We're not looking to add a whole bunch of acreage where we're mowing and watering and weeding and, you know, planting flower beds and things like that.
The native plants that were along Driftwood Road only got taken out by the mudslide, and there were thistles everywhere, and thank heavens now.
That topic is not on the agenda right now, thank you.
But thistles are native.
No, they're a pest weed, and we're not supposed to have them anywhere in the city.
Oh,
I don't believe we have a designation for the kind of growth that is in native, do we?
We have a native seed mix.
But Utah Native Wildlife or Wildflower Guide shows thistles in them, so I didn't realize they were not native.
All right, so I'd like to ask a couple questions. You say you're going to have a station there, right? Some kind of station along the transportation corridor.
Well, it's proposed there. If that happens and the demographic works and UTA comes in and asks your city for it, then that's what we've planned for.
Okay, so I use mass transit all along the corridor. I-15, I use the train, I use tracks, whatever. Where would the parking be? Let's say I wanted to pick it up. I wanted to get onto your station there. Where is that parking going to be?
That's a good question.
I haven't seen one station that doesn't have a good-sized parking lot, so you might want to consider that.
Well, having been an avid transit rider myself, you know, one of the problems that we have up and down the Wasatch Front is that the stations are programmed for park and ride. We don't really have any good examples of, you know, transit-oriented development in the form of villages and centers that would, you know, warrant the limitation of park and ride atmosphere. You know, what we've at least attempted to do is prepare relative to what UTA wants to see in terms of development intensities, so that the station area is transit supportive. You know, but again, we don't really have, aside from downtown, and that's an anomaly, we don't have any good examples of environments that aren't anything more than a park and ride. So it's anticipated, and if you look at other parts of the country, it's anticipated what D.R. Horton is actually doing is bringing in transit level intensities ahead of the market for transit. And relative to this area being deemed a transit corridor, the likelihood based on those intensities is that UTA would go, this is actually a really good spot because it's already supportive. But it's going against that park and ride model that, you know, you and I are used to seeing as you go from stop to stop, and it's you park your car and you get on the train and you come back and get in your car and drive home. That's not the environment that's intended here.
Okay, that's my argument. My argument is this, and then I'll go on to other things, but my argument is this. If the justification for having high density in this construction, or, you know, in this proposal, is given because you have a transit corridor and because you have a potential future, you know, station, you guys get the higher density, but you don't give the ability for the community to participate in that station. So I'll let you respond to that if you wanted to. But.
Well, you know, I think the thing to realize is that this is going to be, you know, just like any other transit corridor, it's one of many station areas. And so with the few examples that we have of station areas that aren't primarily park and ride, you don't see, you know, an abundance of parking around those. There will be other station areas that will do that and require that. But, you know, and it's probably, I would just make a recommendation that it's probably about time to, have Paul Drake from UTA come in and talk about TODs and what the elements of a TOD are and what they're actually trying to evolve to, and all they can do is influence. But I think understanding what they're thinking relative to what you potentially are moving towards within Saratoga Springs in terms of future transit is important, because those things need to line up. If they don't, there's not going to be transit moving, west of the Front Runner corridor. You just don't have the pieces.
Let's talk about that. You say this is a piece, but east of this, have you had any discussions with Lehigh or any other connectivity where this would end up going to? Is it going to connect to the other train station?
If I can jump into that,
Sure.
It's been on our transportation master plan for years and years. This does show a connection over to the American Fork Station. And so...
Does Lehigh have it on theirs too? I'm just curious.
Ish. They would like different alignments, and that's part of what we're working with on them.
Okay.
So just so you know, we are having those conversations, but, I
Right.
mean, if, from our standpoint, we have long held this is our alignment. It comes in on Pony, it loops up to 73 and goes out to Eagle Mountain via 73, because they can't make the grade over Unity Pass work off of Pony Express. So, I mean, we are planning for that corridor. It will probably be BRT to start off with. It might be some other iteration, but yes, it's absolutely in our plan. Our transportation network will absolutely need it in the next 20, 30, 40 years, and so we're absolutely holding on to this alignment, but there could be multiple alignments. There could be BRT here, there could be BRT on Pony and 21. We don't know.
Yeah, and, it's one of those things, cart, horse, egg.
Yep.
But you have to start somewhere, and I think since this has been designated as a transit corridor, I think adding higher densities around it will encourage it to be used as a transit corridor, maybe even more quickly than other areas. As far as the park and ride nature of the stations, I live in downtown Salt Lake, and many of the stations in Salt Lake do not have parking, and they function just fine. I realize it's a little bit more dense, but even as you get into some of the less dense areas, they don't have parking.
Maybe City Center, but North Temple Station has it.
But as you go toward the airport, many of those do not have any kind of parking, and
Who owns the
Makes
parking?
sense.
Who owns that
those out
parking
there.
right? Is that the city, or is that?
In many cases, it's UTA. They own the areas around their stations.
and there are different models for stations. There are different
Yep.
kinds of stations. And I'm sure that some of the stations along whatever this line ends up being will be the model that's more of a park and ride. This one doesn't necessarily have to be that model. It
And I
could be-
get it from a business standpoint that it just doesn't make money to put asphalt on the ground. So let's move on. I got three other things. The dog park, or the dock park.
Dock Park,
Do you have a fence in that area?
yes.
I was just imagining dogs saying, okay, let's go.
No, it's hard to see on the plan, but there is a
Okay.
fence that surrounds it, and we're proposing chain link.
Okay. Third thing, so I love the outdoors. I take my kids out there all the time, and if they fall and they cut themselves, great. This is good experience. So, but I'm curious, have you considered the liability for the different things that you're proposing in all of your parks? I think they're awesome. If my kid cut himself, I'm not going to say a thing. I'm going to say, that's great. Put a Band-Aid on it, let's go. But other people might not see it the same way. I'm just wondering if you considered that, so, since it's a work session.
Yes, we've considered it.
I hope you do it anyway.
Yeah, no, once you start to use a pre-manufactured national parks kind of play equipment, it comes with all kinds of standards and fall zones. As we design these, we do enough parks that we understand, okay, it's going to make sense to do this kind of fall surface, we're going to need kind of this much space, but you're spot on. In a very sad way, America has lost its ability to go and play. Where these are private parks, we do have much more creative license, so to speak.
I hope you still do it. I hope, just maybe you put a sign up says play it only.
Correct. You're exactly right with the sign. Yeah, because they really are unique and fun.
Yeah.
Interesting thing about the law is maybe open to the public. liability.
We can't at that point.
Just keep it private. If they did not charge a fee for it, you'd have a limitation on liability for recreational amenities.
What did you say, if you open it to the public, there's less liability, is that what you said?
Yeah, recreational trails and recreational amenities, if you have it open to the public and you don't charge a fee, Utah law limits, or basically says there's no liability for the landowner. So we hear a lot of complaints oftentimes with the trails that the HOAs have to maintain, and they leave the trail open to the public. We kind of have to explain to them, no, the law limits your liability. You don't have any liability, basically. So it's kind of nice. I think that's a benefit for all of us, that we don't have to worry about those, especially for the landowners, they don't have to worry about those liability concerns, and as a result, it opens up more, I think, more land for the public to use.
That's good, okay.
Okay, last question. Your lighthouse, which is considerable in size, is it going to actually have a light in it?
It won't have like a functioning light, like a lighthouse, like what you would picture. It will have a soft glow on it with a frosted, dark, it'll meet dark sky compliance. It will have a glow, but it's not going to be a light. Like we're not going to have to worry about foot candles.
So, yeah, my next question is to Jenna Albers. How many birthday cakes will be in the lighthouse?
Yeah, no, it defeats the purpose of a lighthouse if it doesn't have just a little bit of light. We're not going to do anything significant.
I think you're right. I think you have to have something in there. Any other comments from the planning commission or staff on this work session?
I just have
Okay.
we'd like to see the rear elevations of the ones that will face public streets.
Right, so there's a facade plan in your neighborhood plan, which says, which highlights the facades and those that address the streets that would need to have full architecture.
Right, but it doesn't show up here.
Okay.
You need your mic on. Would you say that again? Just
You'll get-
do a little recap. You need the elevations for the rear facing?
Rear facing, well, so that we don't have a Redwood Road with plain back.
Right, but we came back and fixed that, remember?
Not.
Some of it, as much as we could.
There's a real specific plan in the neighborhood plan that talks about when a facade is going to be visible from public streets, and it actually identifies them, which is great. But I think what we're asking is for a little bit more information what that means.
Well, yeah, what we're actually going to see. We'd like to see what the front looks like, but in those cases, we want to see what the back's going to look like.
Right, and I guess my question would be for staff, when is it appropriate for us to show that? Is that something that comes with the neighborhood plan or with the preliminary plats? Thank you.
Hopefully we provided some good value for you tonight. Do you have any other questions for us? Anybody here? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Yes.
Okay, we're going to take a 5-minute recess.
What did you, what did
Try and get me out of here as fast as possible.